point that's made in this verse is, what is the question?
One point that's made in this verse is really one of the key points of controversy is this phrase, keeping body and soul together. Somebody might say, oh, big body and a big soul, so I need more than somebody else. I mean, isn't it? It's personal realization and personal opinion, that particular aspect of how much somebody needs. Prabhupada once said that he takes everything away from a rich man, try to make him live like a sannyasi who will die. So, how to decide what is keeping the body and soul together? How is each person supposed to understand that phrase?
Let us take two examples of Nityasiddha Paramhamsa, intimate associates of the Lord. First we'll take Radhanath Das Goswami. Radhanath Das Goswami was one of the most confidential personal servants of the Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He so much was concerned with utilizing all of his energy for Krishna that he wanted to minimize his bodily functions as far as possible. At one point, Srila Radhanath Das Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was observing. He was a wealthy man's son. His father and uncle were worth billions and billions of rupees. They were the wealthiest people in all of Bengal. And they were pious. They were Vaishnavas. They were devotees. They were supporting practically all the activities of the devotees in the entire state. They lived in Saptagram. They were big, big landowners. And they had such influence. But Raghunath was not concerned with all of that. He left it all. He was the only son. They were depending everything on him. And he was so much anxious to personally serve the Lord for the betterment of all humanity. He left it all. And they were begging, praying, everything to get him back, but he would not come back. They were sending him money. He was using it to feed all the Vaishnavas. But then he stopped taking that. Then he was begging at the Shingadwara gate. But then he felt too fruitive. He was looking at people, thinking that when people go by, rather than thinking of what I can do for them, I'm thinking was what are they going to give to me? So he stopped begging. So eventually, once a day, what he would do is the prasadam of Jagannath that was not sold throughout the entire day. They would throw it for the cows to eat. Just on a big pile. To this day, that place is still at the Jagannath temple where they just throw the old prasad. And there's always cows walking around on this pile eating rice. And at the end of the day, after the cows ate everything, the rotten parts that the cows didn't like and spit out, Raghunath would take that and eat it. And that's all his tongue would touch throughout the day. It was rotten rice rejected from the mouth of cows, spit out. But to him, even that was too much sense gratification. He came to the point where every 2 or 3 days, he would take a tiny little poundful of buttermilk. And while he would be taking it, he would be sincerely condemning himself, thinking, just see what a useless person I am. wasting all this precious time and energy simply for my sense gratification when I should be serving Krishna. And his body was emaciated because he was only taking a little buttermilk every 2-3 days, 1 poundful. That's Radhanath Swami. He was keeping his body and soul together with that. Now let's talk about another Nitya Siddha Paramahamsa, who's no less Bhima. Could anyone say Raghunath is a better devotee than Bhima? They are both on the highest platform. Bhima, you know the story. He used to eat a lot. If you try to imitate Raghunath Das Goswami, you will die. And if you try to imitate Bhima, you will die. that in Ekachakra, Lord Nityananda's birthplace, before the advent of Lord Nityananda, there was a great demon with the name Bakasura. Kunti, Pandavas, they were all staying together in the house of one family. And this Bakasura was very, very bad demon. He was just whimsically coming in. He was a Rakshasa. He would just come into the town and eat people. Just start devouring people. So the leaders of the town made an agreement that once, I think every fortnight, we will bring you an offering of a whole gigantic wagon full of food, nice food, rich foods. And you can eat the wagon plus the driver. Just leave us alone. All right. So they were taking different people from different houses every day. So that the home that Kunti was in with her 5 sons, so people at the house, they were crying because they had to send their son to be eaten by Bakasura. So Kunti felt very much sympathetic. She said, you only have 1 son, but I have 5 sons. Let me send mine. If he eats my son, I still have 4 more. But he will not eat my son. So he sent Bhima. Now Bhima, because it is explained, the whole time that they were in exile, Bhima would go out and he would be in charge of begging food. And all the other Pandavas, they used to also beg, but he was the best. Because when you're motivated, you get the most. Sankirtan, the more your motivation, the more you collect. It's not a question of physical skills, it's a question of your enthusiasm. So he was very enthusiastic. So what they would do is, when they'd all come back and have all their food together, all the Pandavas, there was the 5 Pandavas in Kunti, they would divide it all in half. And Bhima would eat the first half, and the other 5 would eat the other half. And usually, he was so much hungry that they would give them part of bears. So this is how he was living. He was living for years without having ever been satisfied as far as keeping body and soul together. So what happened is when Bhima heard that there was going to be a whole big wagon load of prasad being sent to Bakasura, he said, Kunti Devi, I'll take it. So as he was driving that big, giant cart, mountain of prasad, as he was driving it up, he was just eating and eating and eating and eating. By the time he got to Bakasura's place, practically everything was done. He was still eating. He was so happy. Bakasura comes, what is this? You're eating my offering. You deserve to die. And he attacked Bhima. And Bhima, it's explained in Mahabharata, he just held the demon off with one hand because he wasn't finished. Held him off and continued eating until every last morsel was consumed. Then he washed his hands and washed out his mouth, and he said, all right, now this is a secondary priority, killing you. Now, if you could kill Bakasura, you can also eat what's on his wagon. If you cannot kill Bakasura, then you can only eat what you need. One name of Bhima is Brikodar. Brikodar means one whose belly is like a wolf. It means wolf belly, literally. And Srila Prabhupada said if you can perform Herculean tasks like Bhima, then you should eat like Bhima. He was honestly taking what he needed to keep body and soul together. And Radhanath Swami was honestly taking what he needed to keep body and soul together. So what does it mean to keep body and soul together? It means that according to the necessity of how we could best serve. If we eat too much, we become tired, we become sickly. We should eat simple foods, and we should eat what we need to have maximum strength for devotional service. Krishna says in Gita, this process is not for one who eats too much or eats too little. If you eat too little, you will be weak. If you eat too much, you will be sickly, you will be weak, you will fall asleep. So we eat what we need. Body and soul together, which means how can I best serve you, Krishna?
Maharaj, it said, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Nidesh Arjun Tishtati. So by serving the different peoples also, we can serve Krishna.
By serving who?
Different peoples, because Krishna is in the heart of every living entity.
Krishna consciousness means to be conscious of Krishna in them. If you are conscious of Krishna in them, and you are serving them accordingly, yes, that is devotional service. But without the guidance of one who is conscious of Krishna within them, who is a spiritual master, Krishna is unapproachable in the hearts of others. He's unapproachable in our own heart. If we cannot perceive him in our own heart, how can we see him in another's heart? Therefore, that same Krishna who's within your heart appears externally through the scripture and through the sadhus. They are the external manifestation of Krishna within the heart, and they are giving you direction how to serve him best.
One man asked me that why only rich people are there in Krishna consciousness.
Richard Maharaj is so hungry, he's eating Q-tips. Cotton straws. Would you like to answer that question, Swami?
It's not true at all. You want to go to Pakistan and preach, you'll see the devotees there are probably the very poorest devotees you'll ever find, but they're some of the most blissful people on the planet. When I go there, it's the most ecstatic programs ever, anywhere. You go to Africa, see the devotees there.
Go to New Vrindavan.
Go to
You don't have anything there. All they have is Krishna. What that person is saying is true.
in that sense, it's true.
Whoever has Krishna is the wealthiest of all people. Whoever does not have Krishna is in poverty. whether they're Rockefeller or anybody else, poverty-stricken. But from the material point of view, Krishna consciousness is for everyone. These boys from Lady Northcote Hindu Orphanage, are they rich? Are they wealthy? Yes, because they have Krishna.
First is connected with the question which you, with a body and soul, because another question was asked. Because usually now there's the practical side of the question I'm asking, that my friends, good friends and my God brothers say, well, we must keep body and soul together because, you know, we have all fly mentality. All the time we want to find out which suits us in what our Prabhupada has taught us and which suits in our situation. Just like one advocate or doctor, you know, he started observing some austerity at time, and Prabhupada has mentioned about that, and within 1 year time he died. So we want to do certain things in such a way, well, we should not take much austerity. Otherwise, you know what happened to that advocate? He died within 1 hour because of austerity. So we will go on this speed like this for like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, same speed, because we should not take more than that. Otherwise, we may die. So this is first.
You will die whatever you do. Bhaktipada teaches us, die to live. Unless we're willing to die for Krishna, we cannot live for Krishna. That advocate that you're talking about was not Krishna conscious. That's why he died. Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they had a lot more than him, and they gave it all up in a day. And they lived. Unless we're willing to die for Krishna, we cannot live for Krishna. So we have to stop making excuses and justifications of why not to surrender. We should utilize that same intellectual capacity to think of excuses and justifications why I should surrender more.
Regular
question.
The time has been expired. What time is it now?
10 o'clock.
This troubling me all the time, that most of the people who are trying to become Krishna conscious, they can give up meat eating, gambling, leisure, sex, intoxication, they are ready to chant. But now new philosophy is developing, well, we can control not to see video or television, but you know, we can't force our children, you know. They must see, otherwise they will go out. And by that method they also see. So, because this actually this is the way by which we are fooling. Because everything we can give up to, but to give up television, Maharaj, is the most difficult thing in this age.
You answered your own question.
No,
If you're attached to seeing it, the mind will figure out some way to see it. So the point of Mara's lecture, the first point of it was that if you're going to be a parent, then you have to deliver your child from the cycle of birth and death. It's your responsibility. If you're teaching them in the guise of excuse because they want to watch TV, which has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, then it's sinful. It's sinful. You're not doing your duty. So take the responsibility of being a parent seriously and set the best example. have all your time engaged in activities more pleasurable than watching TV. Chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping the deity, inviting friends. Also, it says in the purport.
Jai. Jai. Jai.
Parikshit Maharaj has used, however, the word Vishesh Jana. There are two kinds of transcendentalists, namely the impersonalist and the personalist. Vishesh Jana refers to the personalists who are interested in transcendental variegatedness. The devotees become jubilant by hearing the descriptions of the personal activities of the Supreme Lord, whereas the impersonalists, who are actually more attracted by the impersonal feature of the Lord, are only specifically attracted to the personal activities of the Lord. As such, in spite of coming in contact with the pastimes of the Lord, the impersonalists do not fully realize the benefit to be derived, and thus they remain in exactly the same morose position due to fruitive activity with the materialist. King Parikshit continued, "The capacity of talking can be perfected only by describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. The capacity for working with one's hands can be successful only when one engages himself in the service of the Lord with those hands. Similarly, one's mind can be pacified only when he simply thinks of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. This does not mean that one has to be very thoughtful, but one simply has to understand that Krishna, the absolute truth, is all-pervasive by his localized aspect as Paramatma. If only one can think that Krishna as the Paramatma is everywhere within every atom, then one can perfect the thinking, feeling and willing function of his mind. The perfect devotee does not see the material world as it appears to material eyes, but he sees everywhere the presence of his worshipable Lord in his Paramatma feature." Maharaja Parikshit continued to say that the function of the ear can be perfected simply by engagement in hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. He said further that the function of the head can be fully utilized when the head is engaged in bowing down before the Lord and his representative. That the Lord is represented in everyone's heart is a fact, and therefore the highly advanced devotee offers his respect to every living entity, considering that the body is the temple of the Lord. But it is not possible for all men to come to that stage of life immediately, because that stage is for the first class devotee. The second class devotee can consider the Vaishnavas or the devotees of the Lord to be the representatives of Krishna, and the devotee who is just beginning, the neophyte or the third class devotee, can bow his head before the deity in the temple and before the spiritual master, who is the direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the neophyte stages, in the intermediate state or in the fully advanced stage, one can make the function of the head perfect by bowing down before the Lord or his representative. Similarly, he can perfect the function of the eyes by seeing the Lord and his representative. In this way, everyone can elevate the functions of different parts of his body to the highest perfectional stage simply by engaging them in the service of the Lord or his representative. If one is able to do nothing more, he can simply bow down before the Lord and his representative and drink the Charna Amrita, the water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord or his devotee. On hearing these statements of Maharaja Parikshit, Sukadev Goswami became overwhelmed with devotional ecstasy because of King Parikshit's advanced understanding of the Vaishnava philosophy. Sukadev Goswami was already engaged in describing the activities of the Lord, and when he was asked by Maharaja Parikshit to describe them further, he continued with great pleasure to narrate Srimad Bhagavatam. There was a very nice Brahmana friend of Lord Krishna. As a perfect Brahmana, He was very elevated in transcendental knowledge, and because of his advanced knowledge, he was not at all attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, because unless one is a perfect devotee, he cannot achieve the highest standard of knowledge. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that a person who has come to the point of perfection of knowledge surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, any person's senses which are